Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, February 29th. It's an extra day, leap year, 2016. Mr. Clerk, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, tonight, 6:30, organized pledge and read mail. 6:35, we have stormwater excitement. The MS4 evaluation and action plan, town bylaw amendments, and 7:35 is public input, members update. 7:40, town appointments, Conservation Commission. 7:50, Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, FY 2017, Town Operating Budget, Staffing Priorities, Highway Engineer, and the May 2nd Annual and Special Town Meeting, insert articles. 8:20, Other Business, Non-Union Management Employee Contracts for the Deputy Fire Chief, Deputy Police Chief, and the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget. And then we have Administration of Performance Appraisal System, Town Administrator, Police Chief, Fire Chief, and minutes approval. Mr. Bergman, mail.
Mr. Chairman, there's just one item in the packet. Since we met just 1 week ago, we have a new flyer out for yet another public forum. This one is on our open space and recreation plan, and it will be held on Tuesday, March 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the police station community room. This will be the last public forum that we have for updating the open space and recreation plan. We had a public forum last summer or fall, and we've hired the Metropolitan Area Planning Council to update that document, which once it's approved by the state, we are eligible for going after certain competitive state grants for open space or recreation. So we're looking forward to getting that document completed.
Master plan update committee there, Mr. Avello?
Brilliant idea.
It would
Melissa,
be.
why didn't we think of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I bet you did. I know you've been talking about it. I heard you.
And speaking of which, just another plug that on Wednesday night this week, March 2nd at 7 p.m. in this room is the kickoff for the master plan update, and more information is available online. Hope to see you there.
See how I look right into that one?
Second.
Just making sure. All right, the first agenda item is the stormwater MS4 EPA permit. This is probably the third time we've discussed this at the Selectmen's meeting in regards to new regulations coming out from the Environmental Protection Agencies. We have Littleton Water and...
Emily Sherbo from Time Bond.
Yes, Emily, to give us an update. And we also, tied into the MS4 evaluation, is a couple of town bylaw amendments that have to be put in place to be in compliance.
And we have Rebecca Lacey from
And
our
Rebecca,
town
I'm sorry,
council.
Rebecca.
So just as an intro, we'll have the presentation made by our expert team of Corey and Emily and Rebecca. When last we discussed stormwater at length in the fall, we had Fred Sivian here from Mass DEP talk to us about what the so-called MS4 municipal stormwater permit that EPA was about to issue for many communities in Massachusetts, including Littleton. And we're beginning to understand that there's going to be some significant steps that the town would have to take to follow it. We had prepared a placeholder article for the fall special town meeting, but ultimately did not go forward with any bylaw amendments at that time. Rather, what we told the voters is that we would be back at our annual town meeting in May 2016 with appropriate amendments to the town bylaws and also to have a better knowledge of what implementing the MS4 permit would actually look like. Littleton had a permit that was issued in 2003 by EPA. There's another, the updated permit is is to be issued by EPA sometime soon in 2016, and perhaps within the next month. We'll get some updated information on that. But in putting together our team, I just want to say how important each of these folks is. First, Corey Godfrey has been our stormwater guy in Littleton for the last couple of years, and that he has been our representative to the Northern Middlesex Stormwater Collaborative that Littleton's been participating in with other communities in our region. There's been a lot of important information that and information sharing that comes out of that. Through that process, we've looked around and found that the town of Westford was sort of right on top of stormwater, and Westford introduced us to Emily, who is their stormwater engineering consultant, and we saw a particular scope of work that we could do, which we have the fruits of that labor in the packet, of a stormwater action plan, taking a look at what things did we say we were going to do in the 2003 permit, what things are we going to need to be doing as the 2016 permit goes forward. And then also added to our team in recent months is Rebecca, who I think in a past life has represented other towns on stormwater issues. I think you worked with town of
Yes,
Concord
Concord
as their counsel. And Concord is also one of those towns that's been dealing with stormwater issues, although Concord has been where we don't want to be, and that is on the receiving end of an EPA fine for not doing all they were supposed to do under their EPA permit. So we have that wealth of knowledge that's now in our town council firm, and we're happy to have Rebecca here with us. So our immediate goal is to update the board and the public on where we are with stormwater issues in Littleton, and to bring forward particular measures that we would like to have the board put on the town meeting warrant to be able to go forward. We've mentioned before recently that the Clean Lakes Committee that has been staffed by Corey has voted to recommend that some cell tower funds that are available for Clean Lakes projects be made available to help the town address stormwater permit implementation issues. And that ends up being very, very significant for us. The number that Clean Lakes put on the table is $300,000, that they have a fund balance of about just under $500,000 right now. And they've indicated their desire to support $100,000 a year for 3 years to go towards stormwater implementation costs. What's particularly significant about that is, as you'll see, that there's in the action plan is that it is within our power, if we manage our resources carefully, to be able to address nearly all of the issues that we face with that permit using those funds, and not also using additional property tax funds. We don't really budget for stormwater to any great degree in our budgets, in our operating budgets. Many other communities are finding that they can only address stormwater costs by establishing fee structures that would then be paid by property owners. So what's particularly important about this plan is that there's a solution and there's a funding source that can be put in place that does not involve additional fees or additional property tax, and that will give us some time. It'll give us 3 years to see whether there are any other issues that come down the pike in terms of implementing stormwater. We still haven't seen the permit. We've seen there's a draft permit out. What the final permit looks like may or may not contain all of those provisions, but I think we've got I hope you'll agree, we've got a much higher comfort level of where we are with stormwater now than we did in the fall, and that if we need to by the time we're facing town meeting voters in May with the measures that we're talking about tonight, that we will have assembled the information we need to, and that we'll have the resource folks available to help answer questions when we get there. So I turn it over to Corey next to start off.
Great. Thanks, Keith. So what I'm going to do is give a little background and overview describing what stormwater runoff is, how it's relevant to Littleton, and a few of the things the town's already been doing to address the issue. So essentially, stormwater runoff is just rainfall that falls on impervious surfaces like streets and parking lots and runs off into the town's storm drain system. And when it runs off those surfaces, it carries a lot of different pollutants with it, and those go into the storm drain system. And contrary to popular belief, those storm drains are not connected to any kind of treatment plant or other sort of system generally. They just go down a straight pipe directly into the closest lake or stream in general. So that's sort of a problem nationwide, and the EPA is addressing that problem through the stormwater permitting program, the MS4 program. And through that program, they're essentially forcing municipalities to address stormwater with the goal of cleaning up the nation's polluted waters. And so some of those pollutants that we're talking about are things like sediment that's on the road surface, gets washed off in it rains, nutrients, oil and grease from vehicles and other sources, bacteria, things like that. And these pollutants cause various issues, for example, beach closures, which we have occasionally here in Littleton on Long Lake, cause issues with excessive algae in Mill Pond, for example. So they are real issues that are being caused by stormwater runoff. So this here might be a little bit difficult to read any of the text on here, but the main point is this is showing the town of Littleton with all of its water bodies, lakes and streams and wetlands. The ones that are highlighted in red have been designated as impaired by both Mass DEP and the US EPA. The word impaired is essentially just a technical regulatory term for polluted, so that's what it means. And so these water bodies are polluted not by the traditional sources from decades ago, like factories and big wastewater plants, but they're polluted by stormwater runoff. We don't really have any large factories or wastewater plants in Littleton that cause this kind of pollution. So it's essentially all coming from runoff from streets and parking lots and other sources as well.
Hey, can we pause on that slide, please?
Sure.
Because we basically got two colors, red and blue, blue being good, red being bad.
Sure.
And Long Pond there, Long Lake, is being bad. Can we quantify that just a little bit? Because red is a very drastic color. So folks listening to this at home right now and in the audience see this, and what does that mean to them? I've been swimming in a polluted pond these last 50 years I lived in town.
Yeah.
So can we quantify it a little bit rather than just binary 0 and 1?
Right. Well, according to Mass DEP and US EPA, it's polluted. So in their terminology, and the way they define that is based on what are called water quality standards. So they'll have specific numeric limits on each pollutant type. So phosphorus, for example, has a limit, a concentration that you cannot exceed, and once you do, then you're considered impaired. And the same thing for bacteria and other pollutants. And they determine those thresholds based on scientific studies showing a link between exceeding that limit of that pollutant and an impact on the water body. So it might be an impact on fisheries or on recreational use of the water body. So there's a lot behind it, but at the end of the day, as far as EPA is concerned and as far as we're concerned from the standpoint of spending money anyways, it's either impaired or it's not. Unfortunately, that's the way they look at it.
For example, again, in the small print, it says for Long Pond, phosphorus, dissolved oxygen, and algae as that which impairs the waters. So.
Is the water safe to swim in?
Yeah.
Generally, yeah, and unless you have one of those beach closures, because those are based on generally exceedances of bacteria. So this one's not impaired for bacteria, but there are occasions where bacteria is above the safe level for swimming, and the public is then notified, and the signs go up, and they're told not to swim.
And Melissa, your association with Clean Lakes, you understand why I'm asking this.
Absolutely. You want to know, am I safe when I go in this body of water?
Well, I feel very safe going into Long Lake.
Me too.
I'm not worried about that. It's just that when we only have a 0 and a 1, so it's binary, polluted, not polluted, that's not good information.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Unfortunately, that's the way EPA looks at it, however.
Okay,
We're in a
understand.
pass-fail system with EPA, so.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, so I was just going to cover a couple of things that the town has been doing over the years to address stormwater. It's not necessarily a completely new issue to the town. There has been a permit in place since 2003 that has a whole list of specific activities we're required to implement each year. And some of these things include educational activities, implementation of what are called best management practices. Those are just things you do to try to prevent stormwater pollution. Providing guidance to developers on proper stormwater management. There's been some water quality monitoring and some lake restoration. So for example, every year the fourth graders in town take a field trip to LELWD and learn about a variety of things, including water supply, electrical distribution, things like that, and also some environmental themes. So this is a picture from last year's field trip where the fourth graders are actively involved in a hands-on demonstration of how stormwater is generated and where it goes when it runs off the land surface and how it carries pollutants into streams and lakes.
Can you bring that to town meeting?
I could. It might be hard to get a few hundred people around the table, but we could try. Another example is on Long Lake. I think this was back in around 2002. There was a stormwater treatment wetland installed just west of the beach area, and several rain gardens were installed in the neighborhood as well. And this was mostly funded by a grant from Mass DEP. And so basically what the stormwater treatment wetland does is takes stormwater runoff from a variety of storm drains in the neighborhood that used to discharge directly into the lake, and now directs that discharge into the wetland to provide some treatment before it gets to the lake. And that's been in place for over a decade now, and it's really successful. Another example is the Low Impact Design Manual that was put out by the town in 2007, and this is a resource for developers who are proposing subdivisions or commercial property development, and the planning board and the water department work with them on recommending different best management practices to mitigate stormwater runoff from those properties. All right, so that was just sort of an overview. Now I'm going to hand it over to Emily, who's one of our real experts here, to talk about more of the details.
Okay, thanks, Corey. All right, so as Keith mentioned, Time Bond's been working with the town of Littleton to really wrap our arms around what's happening with the new permit program. So, here we go. Just to recap on the 2003 general permit that the town has been in compliance with. This permit's been administratively continued. It was supposed to expire in 2008. It was a 5-year permit. Since 2008, we've seen 2 drafts from EPA, and as Keith also said, we're waiting for the final permit, which we expect to come out anytime now. I think it's worth noting too that what you see for this map is the regulated urbanized area for Littleton, which does not include the entire community, and Mass DOT highways are not included either, so the town's not responsible for any of that drainage. Only, only includes discharges from the town's drainage system.
Do we have Mass DOT, do they have a plan? Are they being held accountable?
Yes, they are, and I think that they've even been taken to court over this, and they've really ramped up their program, so they've done substantial mapping in the past several years, and they have been taking their permit much more seriously. So I think even, I believe you guys have DOT's outfall mapping is incorporated into the town's drainage system mapping, so there's some of that information. And there is in the new permit more of a process than there was in the last permit to look at interconnections, so where DOT comes into your drainage system and vice versa, to understand who's responsible for what, and if you find something with their discharges, there's a process to mitigate that.
So Corey, have you been in contact with Mass Highway previously?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
Jim Clyde has the contact there, and he'd be the one that would transfer any information between us and them, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a note about the expected compliance schedule. Again, it's a little bit up in the air since EPA is notoriously slow with this, but they are saying that the permit should be out next month. That being said, we just heard confirmation today at the conference you were at that the effective date won't be for at least 6 months after the permit is in effect. So that puts you in September when the first permit year really starts. 90 days after that, the town's required to submit their notice of intent application to EPA saying that they're going to comply with the general permit, and here's our plan for compliance. EPA then will public notice that notice of intent application as part of their public participation process, and eventually they'll grant authorization to discharge for the town. The takeaway from this timeline is that really permit year 1 will start sometime within fiscal year 2017. So that's why this planning process and looking at the budget now is important. I'm going to just more or less skip over this because I think if Fred was here in September, you know the 6 minimum control measures. The new permit keeps these same control measures. They're just going to be more robust and more onerous for the community. We add on here that sort of 7th control measure for total maximum daily loads. That is the Clean Water Act technical term for what Corey was describing with the impaired waterways. So much more stringent requirements to address specific water quality concerns in Littleton's water bodies, so lakes, ponds, streams. So starting in January, started working with a really good group within Littleton to do an evaluation of the stormwater program from the past permit. So the permit we're under now, the 2003 permit. The group included folks from Conservation Commission, Highway, Planning, Town Administrator's Office, Water Department, and Town Council. So we worked with them, we interviewed everyone, we met 2 times, talked on the phone, I went through all the old annual reports and other volumes of information. So Corey already highlighted a number of the program elements from the program in the past. By and large, I think the town is meeting many of the requirements of the current permit. However, there's a few things that jumped to the top as high priority recommendations that the town needed to take care of really as soon as possible. And as soon as possible is before the new permit goes into effect. The first, I won't talk about too much because Rebecca is going to speak about it, but the 2 bylaws that are before you are really a high priority because when you submit your notice of intent under the new permit, there's going to be a checkbox for are your bylaws in place? Yes, no. So that's why this is expedited. A second high priority item under the same situation is confirming the town's drainage system mapping and the inventory. What was required under the 2003 permit was really only the outfalls in your drainage system needed to be mapped. So all outfalls need to be completely mapped. And I think the town's map is nearly complete, but there's some suspicion that there's a few outfalls left to get put onto the GIS map. We've been talking to Jim at Highway about picking away at those last few question areas to confirm that there either is or isn't an outfall. So that's something we're working on. And the third high priority item was we uncovered that for the Highway Department and Water Department, the oil spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan, sort of another mouthful from federal government, the oil SPCC plan is out of date, so we're working on updating that immediately. As that's something when, and I think Rebecca would know about this, when EPA does do an audit, they often visit the highway facility and poke around, so that would be some low-hanging fruit for EPA.
Emergency management involved in that too? I mean, are you talking like a tanker or something on our roads?
No, yeah,
So
it's
this is
facility specific.
Facility specific. Are there any requirements for emergency management type prep?
That's funny, because so in the new permit, yes, sort of. They're requiring you to coordinate your town, there's a town-wide good housekeeping program where you look into those activities. You look at really municipal properties for potential for spills and any kind of stormwater pollution. So there's a little bit there and a little bit with the illicit discharge detection and elimination program where you talk about potential, like emergency spills. It's still sort of separate, but there's a little overlap with this.
And then, as private companies in town that we have a, the rock quarry, and are they involved in any of this preparation? I mean, if they're looking at the town, should we be looking at those types of businesses? Middlesex Materials.
Right, so that's another tricky question about where the jurisdiction is, because this really only covers the municipal drainage system. So to the extent that they would discharge to the municipal drainage system, you would have an ability to look at what's going on their property. Otherwise, a lot of times, industry like that falls under it's another NIPD's permitting process, but it's the multi-sector general permit. So they may have their own stormwater discharge permit. That's about right.
And how do we figure that out? Will EPA come in and say, Town of Littleton, here's our expectations for you as a municipality, but oh, by the way, we have 4 other permits out there that you gotta go take a look at because we feel it's all encompassing.
I would think probably not, unless Littleton knew of a discharge from a private property into the drainage system. I don't think EPA has an ability to force you to make them comply with perhaps either their permit or a different permitting process.
Okay.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
I'll just add, the quarry, I know it does have its own industrial permit, and they don't discharge into the municipal system, so it's sort of a separate permitting process, and I don't believe they impact our permit anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, so after we looked at the current permit, we jumped into what we think we can expect in the new permit based on what we're seeing in the 2014 draft permit and what we've been hearing from EPA. And so you have this full report, I believe, in your packet. It's a long table of I have the permit with me, and the permit is substantial. We've boiled it down into this, a 5-year plan with all the recommendations spelled out with an opinion of cost for each recommendation. I'm going to give you a couple highlights and then I guess leave maybe the detailed discussion for the Q&A with that. What we saw with our opinion of costs, the total 5-year program costs we're estimating to be about $364,000 with an average annual cost of about $73,000. Now, I would say we are assuming probably a lot of consultant time, perhaps we're assuming on the higher end, to be conservative. Permit year 1, as I mentioned, is going to fall in fiscal year 2017. The most costly recommendations for Littleton in terms of both staff time and direct expenditures, and this is the same for most communities in the Commonwealth, is the outfall and interconnection inventory and dry weather screening. So a lot of that is labor just to get to every single one of Littleton's outfalls and then check for dry weather flow and then take a sample if there's actually flow coming from the outfall. And then the drainage system mapping. In the 2003 permit, we're talking about outfalls being mapped. Now it's everything. So all of the catch basins, pipes, manholes, culverts, anything associated with your drainage system needs to be in the map. So it's a substantial effort.
I'm sorry, to include any MassDOT
No,
contributories?
they're doing their own mapping.
Okay.
But it is in the
But
town's best interest
we're
to
gonna
know
see
where
where
it
that
is.
connection is somewhere?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we can get their layer, and we can
Okay.
get an update of their layer, their GIS layer. I should mention some assumptions and disclaimers with the cost estimate. So the actual cost could be lower if the town elects to use their in-house resources to complete some or all of the monitoring and the data gathering requirements. Again, it's very labor intensive walking around doing the mapping and visiting outfalls. Things that are not included in the estimate are drainage system operation and maintenance, such as street sweeping, catch basin cleaning. That's usually carried elsewhere, and that may increase under the new permit. Correction of illicit discharges and connections if they're found in the outfall monitoring program. We don't know at this point if you find 1, none, 20. And design and construction of additional stormwater BMPs, like you saw, like Corey explained. So the next logical question after you see the cost estimate is, how do you fund this? How can you possibly fund it? There's a number of options. It boils down typically to taxes or a fee. So there are some communities in Massachusetts adopting a stormwater utility. But as Keith explained, right now Littleton has the option of using the Spectacle Pond Cell Tower Clean Lakes Fund. about $300,000, which we think could be enough to do a lot of this program. And really avoid having either a tax increase or even considering a fee for at least a few years. So what is the funding plan for the $300,000? Well, prioritization of those activities, figuring out what's going to be completed year to year, really. I can't tell you exactly what we would do with the $100,000 every year until the new permit comes out. At that point, the town's going to work on their stormwater management plan that's due within the first year of the new permit, and we would spell out all those priorities year by year. This is the statement we made in the report that Keith also talked about in the beginning, that I do think, and I do this work for many, many communities in Massachusetts, that with careful planning, strategic use of town staff, in partnership with consultants, leveraging some grant opportunities, which there's not a lot of, but the town's been very successful getting some grants. Nearly all the requirements that are in that table could be done probably very close to the $300,000. So I felt pretty good at the end of that process, knowing that you had this much funding. Again, how's it going to work? You see that at the year one budget is substantially higher than the $100,000. Well, I can't say that, $100,000. I do think that when we see the final permit from EPA, they've been talking about extending some of the permit deadlines, and I would expect some year one requirements to shift. So I think that that's good news for Littleton. I also think because the costs go down year by year by year, some of those later requirements could get shifted to balance that, to make it, you could level fund the $100,000 per year and really get a lot done. Again, it defers the conversation about raising new revenues for stormwater for at least 3 years. And with that, I will let Rebecca talk a bit about the bylaws.
All right, so once again, I'm Rebecca Lacey from Mears and Harrington, which represents the town, and as Emily mentioned, there are a few compliance items to wrap up from the still outstanding from the requirements of the 2003 permit that's currently in effect, and one of them is this requirement to put certain bylaws in place so that the town has authority to do certain things that will help clean up stormwater. And so those requirements, so there are 3 requirements in the 2003 permit that require bylaws. Towns have to pass bylaws or ordinances to, number 1, prohibit non-stormwater discharges to the storm drain system. Number 2, require sediment and erosion control at construction sites that disturb more than an acre. And then at those same sites, where development is going on, once the project is built, have mechanisms in place so that the post-construction runoff from that project is dealt with appropriately and doesn't harm water quality or cause flooding. And as Emily mentioned, it's important to get this in place before the town has to submit its notice of intent for the new permit, in order that when it submits that NOI, it can say, yes, we're in compliance, we've passed these bylaws, we're all set. So this team of Mears and Harrington, Ty and Bond, town staff have drafted 2 proposed bylaws to meet these 3 requirements. The second bylaw addresses the second 2 requirements. And I know copies have been circulated. They're part of the draft warrant for the annual town meeting that Keith has circulated. I have extra copies if anyone is interested. So I'll just briefly go through what the bylaws involve. So the first of the 2 bylaws is called the Illicit Connections and Discharges to the Storm Drain System bylaw. It's actually a pretty straightforward bylaw. It just says you can't put anything that's not stormwater into the town's storm drain system, with a few exceptions that are things that are basically clean, relatively clean water that EPA allows to go into the storm drain system, even though they're not runoff from precipitation. The key one, probably that people might be concerned about, is uncontaminated groundwater. So EPA is fine with people pumping, their sump pumps or footing drains and so forth, putting out water into the storm drain system. That's fine. Things like street wash water, dechlorinated swimming pool discharges, that's all fine. The kind of thing that this bylaw is really targeted to is if someone if, there's a house that has its sewer drain connected to, mistakenly or on purpose connected to the storm drain system, or if there's someone who's dumping motor oil down a storm drain, this bylaw would give the town authority to stop, to remove the connection, or to force removal of the connection to stop those discharges. So it's just, it's not a permitting process or anything, it's just authority that the town would have so that it could deal with the problems if they arise. And the departments that would have the power to enforce this would be the highway department, since they're always out dealing with the storm drains, and then also the Board of Health for obvious reasons, since some of these things could have health implications.
Are those two enforcement departments dictated by just what we thought was right? I mean, Littleton Water, I would think, would want to, or, I don't know, should they be part of it too, the enforcement?
And a third body.
Yeah.
We talked about it among the group, and the feeling was that Littleton Water could, was comfortable basically referring, if they do find anything or, become aware of something that seems like there's, this kind of thing going on, they're comfortable, just bringing that to the attention of the Highway Department and the Board of Health rather than having their own separate enforcement authority.
Okay.
The policy input we were getting from Light and Water is that they are not interested in being the enforcement agency, so we looked elsewhere. Corey picked up all the stuff on his desk and brought it over to us.
I mean, the highway makes sense just because they're out cleaning, they're looking at the drains, they understand all that. Board of Health makes sense.
I mean, Concord, well, we don't have one, but Concord, for example, has a Public Works Commission, and they are the enforcement agency, but we don't have one.
Okay.
And then too many agencies or departments says enforcers,
Yeah, I get that
that
too,
shared
right?
responsibility gets diluted.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, we
Public
thought,
Works was involved in that decision?
sorry?
Public Works was involved in that decision? Public Works was involved in that decision?
Jimmy?
Jimmy knows about this?
Highway, oh, yeah, Jim has been part of our team working on this.
All right, so the next proposed bylaw is the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. And this addresses the other two of those requirements that I discussed. So basically, for development or redevelopment projects that disturb an acre or more of land, the town has to require both control of stormwater runoff, both, when it's an open construction site and then after it's a completed project. So this bylaw addresses both of those requirements. And this draft bylaw requires anyone proposing a development or redevelopment project that disturbs an acre or more to get what we're calling a stormwater permit from the planning board. And that permitting process would be integrated with any other review that a given project needed from the planning board, like site plan review or a special permit and so forth. So the idea is to not make this extra red tape, streamline it with every other, any other permit process that the project has to go through. The review that will be required is basically the same that the Conservation Commission already does, and the requirements that it puts in place when it's reviewing a project, that it has stormwater, for which it has authority to regulate stormwater management. So for that reason, any project that, for which the Concom is already signing off on all of the stormwater management, for example, like all the stormwater is discharging to wetlands or, that kind of thing, those projects would be exempt from this review process since they're already getting, comprehensive stormwater review. So what this bylaw requires is 3 components, and these 3 components are very familiar to developers and contractors. They're already required, they're required for wetlands projects, they're required by a lot of other towns. So these are, not new documents that people are going to be, confused about what they are. So the first one is an erosion and sediment control plan that basically says, where people are going to put their hay bales and so forth to make sure that soil isn't running off of their construction site. The next is the stormwater management plan, which shows what the drainage is going to look like after the project is developed. That's where we promote the low impact development, try to promote infiltration of stormwater so you don't have huge slugs of stormwater running off lots of impervious surfaces after every rain, which is bad for water quality and for flooding. And then the third component is an operation and maintenance plan so that the town has the authority to ensure that the that drainage system that was designed appropriately for that project is also appropriately maintained over the long term and doesn't get, things don't get clogged or so forth down the road and cause problems. So that's a very brief overview of the bylaws, which are somewhat lengthy, but it's a lot of legalese. I think I gave you what you need to know about the proposed bylaws. And so the bottom line, these are required for compliance with the 2003 permit, but they also have benefits to the town in terms of, promoting better water quality in the town, preventing, flooding and problems with the town storm drain system. So town council's recommendation is definitely that you put them on the warrant for the annual town meeting.
And we're in the process of working with our team to develop some voter information. There are like frequently asked questions. We're putting together flyers that would go out in the electric bill mailings over the course of the next month or so. Information that we can put in the town meeting booklet that gets mailed out to all the voters. So, and I think it's probably worth saying, if we didn't focus on it before, that a couple of things. One is that the reason why we're having to do this at all is because we have a stormwater system. And what does that stormwater system consist of? It consists of public roads on which there's runoff. That's the federal definition of what it means to have a system. So almost through no fault of our own, that the fact that we have roads and the fact that it rains and that there's water running off, that constitutes a system. The new wrinkle, to my understanding, under the 2016 permit is that we'll become responsible for the quality of that water that's produced. That we will. What's different than the 2003 permit? That the quality of the water that comes from the runoff, comes from our drainage system, will be something that EPA will be able to check up on, and a standard that we and other communities would be held to. What specifically that's going to look like and how severe is it, I think we don't know. We'll find out as we roll it out. Another issue that's hanging out there as well is that there's been an effort on the part of the Massachusetts Municipal Association to explore having the Mass DEP be the entity that receives the permit, that gets granted the permit, rather than hundreds of individual cities and towns. I heard a statistic that maybe 46 or so of the other states, it's the state that gets the permit, not so in Massachusetts. So that's why we're seeing, as I said, dozens or hundreds of individual permits going to cities and towns. But that matter is under review. It may or may not change, but we've kept an eye on that. I was at a legislative briefing that MMA had last week. It was a top issue that was of concern to the other cities and towns and the legislators.
All right, thank you. Members, comments, questions? Mr. Knox?
Yeah, I guess one of my concerns is the town's design has so many catch basins. Eventually, will we have retention areas for all those before it goes into a brook? Is that what will be done? Because I guess I personally don't, with all the things you're putting in here, how do you regulate when the water goes into the storm drain, it goes down into a brook? If we're not building some kind of retention catch basin, how can we monitor that and make it clean?
You want me to try to explain? All right. I think at this point in this evolution of EPA's permit, it's more about collecting the information, right? So there's a very robust outfall monitoring program during both dry weather and in some cases wet weather. So you're going to see where you may have some issues with water quality. And another component of this program is looking watershed by watershed at what do you have for pollution, where is it higher, where is it lower, where might you need to build something. There's not a requirement at this point to build any type of stormwater treatment necessarily, but you're looking for opportunities and issues that you might want to correct in the future.
And something,
Go
I want to
ahead.
just add from a like sort of a legal perspective, the way that I think about it is the quote-unquote best management practices that EPA is requiring this permit aren't at this point like structural best management practices, as you're talking about, the kind that you see on development sites and so forth. They're kind of like soft they're like good practices, things like doing more street sweeping so that not as much sand is getting into the catch basins, doing like pet waste education, having like a pet waste bylaw, so, if you have a bacteria problem. So it's more that kind of like pollution prevention practices that they're requiring as opposed to structural practices in general.
Yep, perfect, yep.
Thank you.
So just following on that one, sorry if I may.
No, you're in,
Um,
go for it.
I got a couple, but along those exact same lines, so there's no, requirement to turn the red to blue yet, for example. It's all about trying to improve and make sure there's processes, like you said, but there's no monitoring, and you must get down to this level of all the different things at this point.
No, I'm curious to see how the implementation of some of those requirements go. There are, for water bodies where there is a full study complete, in theory, there's a waste load allocation that you're not supposed to exceed at the end of the outfall. I have not seen enforcement of that
Okay.
at this point. Again, it still seems to be more about fact-finding at this point. I think you would certainly implement all the softer controls first and see.
And monitor and
see.
measure
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Exactly.
So it's
Okay.
that next 5-year permit, we're gonna get whacked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Just two more quick ones, if you don't mind. I was curious because I saw, and maybe more anecdotally, but the street sweepers, we might have to get a new one of those. It's a very expensive item, but I see it on here, but I don't see that we do need to do that. Is that true? It's just about how they put.
I did not go through that in the cost estimates, so that's a whole other, I think, just a separate fact-finding mission to see what you are. It's difficult to tease out what most towns are spending on all of their stormwater because it's in different line items all over the place. So we didn't go through the exercise really of quantifying what you're spending now, and since it is so squishy about what the requirements are in the new permit, I'm not sure how much extra street sweeping you'll do or extra catch basin cleaning. So it's probably something we want to look at during the planning process for the new permit. So yeah, I can't say
No problem.
capital improvements or the increased O&M at this point.
Okay, and one last one, and that's, can or should or how can organizations or committees like the Long Lake Neighborhood Association help with whatever needs to be done? I know at our last annual meeting, they were wanting to be proactive and say, can we apply for grants? What can we do? And, the sentiment was, we need to plug into the larger effort that the town is doing. So what should organizations do to help?
I don't know if Keith wants to jump in at all, but I mean, those neighborhood associations around the lakes are obviously, they all have representatives on the Clean Lakes Committee, and we meet monthly and talk about these issues. And
So
right
just-
now, as you all know, our main push is the Mill Pond restoration project. That's sort of taking up a lot of our, that's mostly what we talk about at our meetings right now. But members of the public are welcome to come to those meetings and talk about the other stormwater issues as well. But as far as getting plugged into the larger town.
Yeah, I mean,
Go through their
I
CLC
think we do hope
representative.
that there's a constituent, it would be very helpful if there is a constituency out in the community that could be mobilized to help us address issues of clean water quality.
Great.
And the Clean Lakes Committee seemed a natural place to start. The Conservation Commission, there are many others throughout town, again, with the idea that the standard is the quality of water. So if there are constituencies that care about that, well, the federal government is telling us the way we should care about it is by doing the right thing by the stormwater permit,
Okay, great, thanks.
or else.
Mr. Ravello?
Yes, thank you. The phrase strategic use of town personnel, when you did your basic estimate, how many man-hours is that?
Oh, that, I should get my whole copy. I've put some estimates, I think, in the outfall monitoring and visiting. I think I assumed, one town staff member plus one consultant. So I listed out all the assumptions anytime I used staff, and that estimate is in the table. But mostly, I did not rely on staff time in that table.
You said one staff member and one consultant, so is that an FTE, full-time equivalent?
Yeah, one full, well, I assumed when we went in the field to do some of that outfall work, not one full-time equivalent for the whole year, but for the number of days I predicted it would take to do that outfall work.
Yeah, remind me, because I don't remember that number of days you said.
Let me get my
It doesn't need to be,
with me.
it doesn't need to be the day, Emily, if you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months.
The outfalls? Hold on, I can tell you.
And here's why I'm going down this road. As I look at enforcement with the highway department, and we just had our superintendent of highways last meeting tell us how he's on demand. And we were looking at an engineer, and I think we discussed that later tonight, don't we? As far as getting him an engineer. So the phraseology, strategic use of town resources, when we feel our strategic resources are pretty well strained tactically each and every day, I don't see how the highway department is out there going around enforcing this. Not saying we shouldn't have an enforcement mechanism. This is getting to the bylaw specifically, so it starts to get to Rebecca's area. But you've got some of the background on the numbers, Emily, that's why I'm asking that. So let me allow you that opportunity to answer the first question.
With 200 outfalls, I think I probably assumed 20 days of time for one person to join us in the
Okay, and
field.
that was based on 10-hour days?
8 to 10 hour days.
Yes. That record reading was 10-hour days?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's 20 10-hour days, 200 hours, yeah, we get into about 25 days or so.
Yeah.
All right, that's certainly manageable in many ways. But then there is that ongoing, after that, the ongoing concern as far as people being out there working to enforce this. Issuing letters, that's staff time back at the highway department, writing letters to folks. I don't anticipate there's going to be a boatload of letters, but certainly we need to quantify it somewhat through estimates, because if we're going to rely on town staff that way, we've got to be able to know what we're asking them to do. And as I, now, Rebecca, to you, as I look at the prohibitions, excuse me, not the prohibitions, but the responsibility for enforcement, we jointly went with Highway and Board of Health, but it's only the Board of Health who will hear appeals. So the Board of Health is really the land of last resort, is that correct?
Yes.
So why do we involve Highway at all, other than perhaps to notify the Board of Health of a possible violation and let Health
Highway
do
is the
it?
one who's out in the field now.
No, that's-
Diagnose it.
That's why I said
Yeah.
Highway can recommend to the board, or at least notify the Board of Health, we've seen this, and get them out of the enforcement mechanism and just put them into reporting. It seems it would reduce some of their resource constraints.
Well, the Board of Health staff is even, I mean, we're talking about the scarce resources, or the Board of Health staff consists of a health agent who's here for parts of 2 days a week and who does exclusively septic system work. So there's no, the Board of Health is not set up as an entity to be out in the field the way that we have Highway.
And I want to add something that I should have mentioned this when I was going through the articles. The articles, each article has 2 parts, which is one to add the bylaw that I described to the town code, but then the second part is to amend the non-criminal disposition part of the town code to authorize that these be enforced by that ticketing procedure that's allowed by by section 21D. And so that was kind of, that's kind of the vision, is that the highway department folks could have just a book of tickets, and so if they do in their daily rounds encounter a violation, hopefully it's something they could do like pretty efficiently, give the violator a ticket. It's kind of a the process is kind of all dictated by statute, and it's kind of the highway department could just write the ticket and then basically be done with it unless there's an appeal that goes to the Board of Health. So hopefully it wouldn't be a huge burden on highway. Hopefully, it wouldn't be a huge burden on highway department staff, and it's more giving them authority to do something that, in certain instances, they're the person that makes the most sense to deal with the problem in the moment.
Okay, I'm not as sanguine in the availability of staff to be able to handle this personally. And where I'm driving with this is, it's probably going to cost us more money than the estimates, because we may be needing extra help.
So I'm gonna, if I may, I'm gonna piggyback on to because my question was about the bylaws and the way they're written. I know this isn't your first rodeo with this, so has the AG seen some of these bylaws as you proposed and written, and approved them? And if so, were there any differences with Littleton and any of the other bylaws that you've seen approved by the AG's office?
So the AG's office did come out with a model bylaw back in, like, around 2003. They worked with the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association to do that. So most of the bylaws that are out there, or a majority of them, sort of drew on that model. And so most of them are like some variation of that basic model, as these two are as well. If anything, we actually streamline the requirements. Those bylaws have some, I don't know, like nooks and crannies and bells and whistles that aren't necessarily, required to meet EPA's minimum requirements. So if anything, I would say the changes that we made from the model were to kind of get rid of anything that was extraneous and not necessary, and just try to keep them as painless to implement as possible, recognizing that it's not going to be painless, but.
Okay. All right, so, we can feel confident that as these move forward, approved at town meeting, we won't see any issues coming back.
That is my expectation.
Okay.
Yes,
So, go ahead.
just to circle back on that, I felt reasonably comfortable that, our lawyers would do a good job as far as that piece goes. And I basically made the assumption that it would pass muster in that way. And then it becomes full impact of law now upon us to be able to resource it. So it's a resourcing issue, is my concern. And that's what I want to keep on the docket here as we go forward. We're looking at budgets in the various departments. So, great, thank you.
Yeah, similarly to PJ, I was concerned about the enforcement in the resources. I think you've already handled that, and we'll just make sure that we keep an eye on that. The other question I had is just to kind of dumb it down for me, and there might be some other folks that need it as well. To define municipal wastewater discharge, are you talking basically anywhere that a public way or public building or public parking lot has runoff into a catch basin, or if the town owns it, that's considered municipal discharge?
Store water, not wastewater. No. Which is good.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll give a response and Emily can chime in, but you basically have it exactly, and there is an official definition of this in the permit. But, right, it is any, like, anything that the town owns, any infrastructure that the town owns that conveys runoff, that eventually gets into a water of the United States that EPA has the power to concern itself with.
And it's just townways. It's, for example, we have state highways.
Right.
In Littleton, which would not be subject to our permit.
Right.
The interstate is not subject to our permit, but the town roads are.
Town properties, not necessarily roads, right? Anywhere, buildings, impervious roofs. If the stormwater is being run off of our buildings and our parking lots.
Well, you got roof drains going right into your catch basins.
I mean, I guess I would say fundamentally, the kind of point of compliance, most fundamentally, is where there's an outfall that is owned by the town that discharges to a water, that's kind of where EPA, sorry?
Of the United States.
Right, exactly, discharges, thank you very much, discharges to a water of the United States. Those are the, that's what EPA is concerned about, that's what EPA is going to require, sampling of and so forth, so that's one answer, and then I guess I would say in terms of the kind of best management practices that are like pollution prevention type things that don't just that apply to a broad land area as opposed to one catch basin. Essentially, EPA is looking to have those kind of enforced like throughout or practiced throughout town. Technically, they're only required within the regulated area, but I think most towns, except towns that have a tiny regulated area, most towns have found it much more efficient to just implement, not worry about which part of town isn't technically regulated, and just have these practices implemented throughout town.
Roads, roofs.
Let me follow up, please.
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
I'm confusing, I'll just say right up front now, I thought it was municipal stormwater, in other words, going into the municipal system. It's not just municipal facilities and buildings and municipal land. It's all the land in the town.
Right, but the...
It's all the properties in the town.
Right, but the town, EPA is only putting certain requirements on the town regarding pollution prevention. So like the town isn't required to, the town has to look at its own municipal facilities and do an audit and, see if there's any danger that things are coming from those facilities and getting into the town storm drain system. The town doesn't have to do a similar kind of audit for like, Joe's Auto Repair or anything like that. So the town, even though the town is fundamentally kind of responsible for anything that comes out of its outfalls, the minimum control measures that EPA is requiring, some of those only apply to municipal properties.
The town may only need to do an audit of town properties, but the bylaw we're looking at is applicable to everybody in town.
Yes, exactly. So,
It's an important clarification.
yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Because those private properties are abutting our public ways and contribute to the runoff problem.
Irrespective of the rationale, I think as was being discussed, the word municipal was used almost exclusively, but it includes private residences, it includes private businesses.
Anyone that is discharging stormwater into the town's storm drain,
Anybody's
MS4
rainwater that
system.
falls someplace other than just through their own ground.
Right, and in fact, in other communities that have adopted a stormwater fund in order to pay for it, the fee structure that goes along with that typically it goes against the private property owners, a residential, maybe a flat rate or something, but for a commercial property, it would be a fee that was sort of based on some calculation of what, how much.
Based on impervious cover.
Impervious
typically.
cover. So it's very much a private property thing that abuts the municipal.
Just want to be clear on what
Ways.
we're recommending to the
That's
folks.
it. Bylaws for the entire town. Any other questions, board members? I'll open it up to the public. Any questions out there? Yes, sir.
How does
Please state your name and where you live.
Chase Gerbig, Oak Ridge Road.
Thank you.
How does the town's bylaw and enforcement action interface with any commercial or industrial operations that already have their own NIPD's permit? And their own enforcement actions under EPA's NIPD's permit? Is there a conflict there at all?
They shouldn't be covered under this permit because they're covered under their own permit.
Right, it should be the case that if they have their own NIPD's permit, that's because they have a direct discharge to a water of the United States. So whatever their issue is with EPA is probably concerning those direct discharges and not, if a business is discharging into the town's system, then it probably doesn't, well, I guess it could have.
I don't think that's true.
It could have the multi-sector general permit, I guess.
You can have a
Yeah,
multi-sector
it could
general
discharge into
permit
the
discharge.
MS4, but it would fall under its own permit, right? I mean, we would be monitoring to ensure that pollution wasn't entering the MS4, but in the permit language, it's excluded from the general permit, because it's covered under its own permit, right?
That's true, yeah.
So the town's bylaws and enforcement action wouldn't have teeth if they already had their own NIPD's permit, as long as they were in compliance with their own NIPD's permit.
But it's two separate issues, because your discharge permit under a NIPD's permit, right, that's covering like general industrial activities presumably, or, so if it's an industrial permit, that's sort of one thing covering your industrial activities, but then if you were to do any sort of land disturbing activities, that could potentially trigger the local. It's a different activity subject to different code. You could trigger the construction general permit federally, or you could trigger the new bylaw locally.
Emily, would you tell everybody that's watching what NIPD's is? It's an acronym I don't think most folks are familiar with.
We just throw that around. National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
On the question.
Name and where you live, please? Just so folks.
Excuse me, my apologies.
No problem.
Jeff James, I'm with the Clean Lakes Committee, down Lowell Road is where I live. The gentleman there was stating, let's see if I can get this straight. The thing is that the EPA, when you have an EPA permit, all right, or if you have to get one, or the DEP, there's a law of progression here, I believe. And as long as that law of progression is followed, and your bylaws or whatever follow that, then everything is pretty much all right. Now, that's to the best of my knowledge. Is that what you believe?
I don't think I followed your question, I'm sorry.
It wasn't a question. It was a statement.
Or I don't think I followed the statement.
Yes. There's a progression of enforcement. Let's use the word enforcement, seeing that the bylaw is an enforcement. If the EPA, in fact, the EPA usually tells the town, the state, the cities, the whole thing, what their bylaws will contain, all right? And by doing that, they set up a progression that their rules will be contained in the DEP laws and regulations, all right? And then down to the, whether it's the Board of Health, usually in most towns and cities, they use the DPW, because the DPW can be used in a multiple fashion. With the highway department, when you really look at it, they're locked into a certain setup. So basically, if you obey the EPA laws, you obey all of the laws.
Right, yes, that's right, that's definitely true.
That's the finality of it all. No matter where you go with it, if you obey the EPA laws, you obey it all.
Yep, I think that's definitely true. And I guess I would say there are some instances in which the town and EPA might both have like concurrent enforcement authority.
Always, it
the-
has to be.
For
It has to be.
For example, for construction sites disturbing more than 1 acre is the example. And that in fact is a total overlap with EPA's construction general permit program, but it was a choice of EPA, exactly as you're saying, to basically say, gee, we don't really have the manpower to be out there checking all these construction sites. How about if we make the municipalities, kind of check them for us?
Well, United States, all of the United States authorities, the Corps of Engineers, et cetera, are great for the delegation of authority. The Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers give the harbor masters all kinds of
Right.
enforcement powers. You say they haven't got a clue what they're doing, but they got the enforcement powers. I'm sorry to be so wordy.
No, that's okay. We
Yep,
appreciate it.
thanks for the
Thank you.
comment.
Any other questions? Board members, any other questions?
I have an argument with the EPA and the code.
So, we're looking for a motion to,
May I ask before we do
yes,
a
go
motion?
ahead, absolutely.
Do we have enough time to put this off to our next meeting? To actually, and here's why I'm asking that. Really, we've only had a couple of days to digest the bylaws,
Yep.
recently presented to us. I still do have questions on town resources that'll be allocated to the enforcement mechanism. And I'd like to be able to quantify that so that when we speak at town meeting, we can tell the folks in town, this is what it will cost us to do that. And I know we can only work in estimates, because we don't know that we've got 10, 100, or 1,000.
We don't know what the scope of work is in the EPA permit yet, so we
So
would
we
be
don't know.
guessing. We would be guessing.
Yeah, but
Well, perhaps we have an educated guess, though.
Yeah.
And I think we owe the folks an educated guess at the very least as to what the resource requirement might be versus just passing a bylaw. Because it's the right thing to do. I've got no problem with the bylaw, it's the enforcement mechanism piece, and I want to make sure we've got a handle on that. At every single meeting we have when it comes to finances, each department, I need more resources. We're putting more requirements on resource-strained organizations already. You should be able to quantify it somewhat, even if it's an educated guess. Okay, Keith? That's my thought on that.
So, yeah, so, the three articles, 7, 20, and 21, which best, I guess we can either do all three at once. I have no objection to it. Does anybody have any issue with that? We're gonna be talking later on, I see what Paul's saying, we're gonna be talking later on about the highway.
Article 20 is the one of my concern.
Okay, so, go ahead, Keith, you had a comment?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not certain how much, well, next Monday night is the last time you'll have to put articles on the
Right.
warrant. I'm not sure how much work we'll be able to get done to address this issue between now and then. I just don't know, and I certainly won't have this team here next Monday night.
Because your resources are limited.
Right, exactly. I mean, we had $10,000 for the scope of work here, and it's a $10,000 product that is what so we can get a handle on what's the neighborhood of what the cost would be to implement the program. We know what the neighborhood is. I don't know that we can get down to closer to the actual figure by, in the next couple of days for next Monday night's
And
agenda.
won't that really be dictated to get into where you're saying down to the nitty-gritty or tying it in closer? We gotta wait for the permit? I mean, that's what we...
Some of it will be permit driven. The other is that, and we just went through the analysis that Bonnie did, that is in the packet tonight, to to answer the same question for another matter, and that is to justify the need for town engineer and highway department. That would, and there's no assumption in this plan that we have a highway engineer. So so if there are things that need to be done, that there are all the more that could be done if we had someone on staff who had the skill set of that engineer. once we
And
get to that.
if during implementation, PJ, I think if we see as a community that this is gonna have a significant impact on the highway department, we need to address it. I mean, that's...
I can help then. I can yield on this.
Yeah.
If we can have a commitment that by town meeting, we can say to the town,
Oh, yes.
given these assumptions,
Yeah.
this is what we anticipate.
Sure.
Yes, we would be much better able to address that issue given more time.
So
Yeah.
I just want to make one comment to kind of separate a couple issues. For the illicit discharge prohibition bylaw, in adopting that bylaw, it doesn't put any affirmative requirements on the town or the highway department. The town can use its enforcement discretion just not to enforce it at all, frankly. So the town can basically enforce it to the level of the resources that it has, versus in terms of the permit program, there's this requirement to go out and look at all the outfalls and so forth. It's an open question whether or not that would involve the highway department or whether that would be a consultant. But just the enforcement of the illicit discharge bylaw is something that can vary according to resources.
So council, you giving us a get out of jail free card that we don't need to enforce this at all?
Well,
That's
state,
a
yeah.
rhetorical question that requires an answer.
That's not what I would recommend, but I just wanted to point out that
We won't put that in the annual report.
No.
But what we do want to put in the annual report is that we've adopted the bylaw, because that EPA is definitely.
Form over substance. Roger. I have nothing else.
Chuck, did you have a question on it?
I might have. It's gone now.
Any other questions, members? All right, so I'd look for a motion for the inclusion of annual town meeting bylaw changes.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles onto the warrant for the May 2nd, 2016 annual town meeting, subject to approval as to form by town council. First one, include in Annual Town Meeting 7, FY 2017, capital items from available funds, $100,000 from Spectacle Pond Cell Tower Clean Lakes Fund to address Year 1 compliance issues with new MS4 stormwater permit. Second one, Annual Town Meeting 20, Town Bylaw Amendment, Stormwater 1, illicit connections and discharges to storm drain system. Annual Town Meeting 21, Town Bylaw Amendment, Stormwater 2, Stormwater Management and Erosion Control.
Second.
Move the second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
I
your
can't wait to see the new regulations.
Emily, do you have the permit with you, just as a viz aid?
You want to see the
Just to
permit,
show it.
yes.
Just the draft permit, or the old permit.
She has a wheelbarrow.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's it.
Weighty.
thank you, team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so next agenda item is a town appointment to fill a vacancy on the Conservation Commission. And I'm going to be corrected. Our next item is public input and members update. Is there any public input tonight? Seeing none. Member update, Mr. DeCoste. Yeah, well.
I want to give a shout out to the winter athletics at the high school. And right now, the boys are playing David Prouty, the opening game of the playoffs. On Wednesday night, both of our hockey teams, the boys hockey team is playing at the Groton School against Fitchburg at 7 p.m. And also on Wednesday night, our girls play on the Westwood Academy girls hockey team. They are playing at 7:45 at Skate 3 in Tingsboro against Winthrop Lynn. And on Friday evening, our girls basketball team is hosting at home at 7 p.m. the winner of the Oakmont and Oxford game. So, way to go, teams. Showing our
Another good year.
title town.
Mr. Avella.
Mr. Bergman mentioned it earlier, but I'd like to reiterate, the master plan kickoff is Wednesday evening, right here in this room, 103, at 7 p.m. Please, everybody's invited. And we'll have our consultant, RKG Associates, Ms. Judy Barrett, doing the presentation for us. That'll be following a town tour earlier in the day, where the Master Plan Update Committee members, some other folks from town offices, general public, and also the consultants driving around town and trying to get a good feel for the town and areas of importance to us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Hebert.
Two quick things from my side. This past Saturday, the Littleton Police Department put on a fundraiser for the K-9 unit. It was a cornhole tournament, which is the beanbag toss, over at the Air Billiards, and it was awesome. Really, really well done. You walked in and the pool tables had kind of been moved and people were playing, right on the floor. Oops, sorry. There were tons of food everywhere. There was tons of people. You could buy T-shirts. It was really great. So great job to the LPD and obviously Patrolman Casey. Second, I just wanted to let the members know the Library Site Selection Committee has had 2 meetings. Actually, one of them is right now, so I'm not at the second meeting. But we are making progress. We formed the committee, formed a chair, did some actions, which I got some of those. And we're moving along, so I just want to let you know that.
Great. Mr. Knox?
Nothing today.
So I only have one thing. We heard over the weekend Mr. Avella isn't running again this year for Selectmen. It's sad news. We enjoyed you on the board and look forward to working out the rest of the term. But congratulations on your family and spending more time with them.
Thanks.
All right. So town appointments, number 4. We're going to fill a vacancy on the Conservation Commission. We had 2 applicants, Chase Gerbig and Heidi Montanari. I see Chase is here tonight. Chase, come on up and tell us a little bit about you and why you want to be on the Conscom.
Sure. Professionally, I'm an environmental engineer. I work with an environmental consulting firm out of Woburn. So to that extent, the Concom is right in my wheelhouse. To a lesser extent, stormwater. Hence throwing around nifties and things like that.
Perfect timing, by the way.
Right, yeah. And to that extent, I mean, Emily very much had the right of it at certain questions and things like that, but I think she's steering you guys correctly, at least from my expert perspective. Lived in Littleton for a little under 3 years now. My wife and I bounced around for a long time before we finally decided to settle in one place. We have 2 kids, and now that's really not going anywhere anymore. Wanted to get involved with the town and contribute the expertise that I do have from a professional perspective. Academically, I've got a PhD in environmental engineering, do a lot of environmental chemistry. Professionally, like I said, I work as an environmental consultant, splitting my time between like a litigation practice where I do expert work for primarily industrial clients, and then the other half of my time is spent doing engineering design work, principally cleaning up hazardous waste sites, but also some more site civil real estate development type work. So, think that pretty much covers it.
Outstanding. Well, I gotta tell you, we appreciate anybody that steps up and volunteers for the town, so thank you for that. Board members, Mr. DeCose, questions?
No, I mean, your CV speaks volumes. Thank you very much for stepping forward. To Jim's point, you know, anytime somebody steps forward, especially newcomers, it's great to have fresh blood. Obviously, you're invested in the community. You've got a couple of children that you're looking to raise here, so conservation's important, I assume, to you based on...
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that was a big draw to us when we were looking, where do we want to land? You know, we live a stone's throw from the Oak Hill Conservation Area. That was a huge part of why we moved to Littleton.
Nice. Mr. Ravello?
Well, I echo the appreciation, too. Now, in the 3 years you've been in town, as you've traveled around the town, environmentally speaking, where are some of the areas you've seen that are big concerns to you?
Big concerns? Honestly, I don't think there are any acute concerns. There are certain concerns with how do we manage any potential issues, and it actually came up during the stormwater, potential issues either associated with the highways or the railways in terms of a spill or major release. You know, they run through some of our most sensitive habitats, our wetlands and things. And a tanker truck tipping over, which happens on a fairly regular basis, you know, statewide, would have really serious effects if it fell and discharged, 5,000 gallons of fuel oil or something in a particularly sensitive area, of which we have a number. And so I think that's, in terms of big catastrophic things, that's the biggest concern. And then the other concern is lots of development going on, and is everybody developing their property in a manner that is consistent with things like our stormwater permits, particularly our construction permits, and the impact that those properties and developments can have on long-term water quality can be almost as bad as one serious spill or something like that in a wetland. So those aggregate effects can be really big too.
Thank you.
Selectman Heber?
I don't think I have any questions, maybe just one comment or two comments. Just to note that this vacancy is created due to the passing of our friend Pete Tierney, so I can't help but mention that. We'll miss him, big shoes to fill, but I honestly couldn't agree more with the comments and questions, actually, you stole them out of my mouth, that were already said. Your resume is outstanding, and thank you for stepping up, so I'm good.
Mr. Knox?
Chase, I read the paragraph you have right there. I said, it's nicely done, pretty impressive. Then, just like you said, I took a look at this resume, and I was extremely impressed into the publications. And this is one of the things he wrote. The effects of dissolved organic matter on mercury biochemistry and environmentally chemistry toxology of mercury.
That's a good read.
Love it.
Six people have read that. Total.
Thank you for offering to do that.
Very good. So you've stepped up, we all appreciate that, but I wish we had the question about the rail when we were talking to the folks before us in regards to the stormwater. They run through some very sensitive areas, Mill Pond and Speck Pond, and
We're actually looking at that issue in the hazard mitigation plan.
Okay.
That the fire chief is Sarah spearheading.
MBTA, the feds,
And all of those guys have to have, due to their size and the severity of the potential impacts that they could cause, all have to have on the books hazard mitigation plans
Sure.
that they can put into effect now. And a lot of the facilities I work with have similar plans, and they have contractors on site who can be at a release in a matter of minutes, if not hours. So they can be dealt with, but even when they're dealt with correctly and expediently, they're costly.
so we were talking about enforcement. I think Conservation Commission should be part of that enforcement. Just saying.
We'll deputize each of the
Yeah.
members.
I was going to be white, I said
Carry
you
a
wanted
big stick.
sideline.
All right, any other questions? I would look for a motion.
And do we
Do
Do we,
you want to consider the other person?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see anybody here. Go
Add
ahead.
to that Heidi Montanari did have a conflict this evening, so she.
Okay.
That's too bad. Her resume is also
Sorry.
very impressive.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have two great applicants.
Right.
Look at the resume of Heidi also, it's,
Having listened to Heidi speak at the Concom, you should certainly give her an opportunity to speak to. She's very smart, very eloquent, and I think someone who would fill the role admirably.
It's gracious of you.
My interest is really in having someone who's qualified on the Concom, whether that's me or Heidi. I feel like she's highly qualified.
All right, who can we kick off?
Well, we do have, the Conservation Commission did have a unanimous vote on February 22nd to recommend to the Selectmen to appoint Chase to fill the vacancy. So, based on that, I appreciate again Heidi coming forward. Any town resident coming forward to get on these commissions, get on these committees, you know, we do it all the time. And it's great to see new faces, new perspectives come forward, so I appreciate it. That being said, I'll still look for a motion.
And just again, Heidi's looked great, but I agree, you know, if we have a board recommendation, I would move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, subsection 8C, and Town Code, subsection 8-4, to appoint Chase Gerbig to a term on the Conservation Commission expiring June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Moving and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you. All right, fiscal year 2017 operating budget, staffing priorities, highway engineering.
Jim, just real quickly,
Yeah.
just Chase has to go to the town clerk to get sworn in, right?
Yes,
Very good.
Yeah, just, yeah,
good
you
point,
just
good
go to the
catch
town
there,
clerk.
Chucky.
Should be at the,
At the polls all day tomorrow
polls
as well.
tomorrow.
Captive audience.
I don't see Jim here, is Jim?
Jim's
Flynn?
away.
Oh,
Out
good for
this
him.
week, yeah.
Good for him.
Yes.
So this was an agenda item we asked to move forward. We had a discussion about the town engineer and the effect of budget, and asked that Bonnie crunch some numbers, and we have it before us. Mr. Ravella, you had some questions, so I'll turn it over to you first for any questions.
Thank you. No, thanks, Bonnie.
Okay.
You did a lot of homework.
Do you want me to just quantify what I did?
Sure, I'm
I think you were
sorry.
punishing us by all this homework.
Thank you.
But
No,
go ahead,
we're happy
please.
to do it. Jimmy and I met twice last week. I did torture him. I pulled out a year's worth of files and bills, and we went through invoices that we knew were relevant to the engineering capacity. We actually dissected them, and I provided some of them there for you so you can kind of see the rationale behind it. But what he did was really looked at the detail in the invoicing to see what Eric Derling used to do when he was here versus what we have farmed out now. So I have an extremely high level of confidence that these items are the minimal amount of savings that you would see by having an in-house engineer. I know that there are other areas that would probably see some financial relief, but with the week time frame, we had to kind of focus on what I knew I could capture. And this was just in a one-year period because I wanted to capture, a year's worth of expenses. I didn't want to go back 5 years. I am confident that if I had, we would have had the similar numbers in each fiscal year because these are expenses that we have been paying ongoing. So I did identify them. I showed what cost savings would have happened had we had an engineer. That we didn't wipe out the bills necessarily, but there were components that we could clearly pull out, like bid management services and oversight for the wastewater treatment facility. Not the detail, testing, but at least the oversight we know that we could handle in-house with an engineer. So just in looking at that very quickly, with the two meetings that I had with Jimmy, we identified almost $74,000 in savings over the last 12 months that we could have had. I would again point out that we know we have some other duties and responsibilities coming forward with this MS4 permit. We're trying to quantify them at this point, but we know that we would use an engineer had we had them on staff for this type of work.
And even in the off-season, we know that they would be able to provide some benefit to the PMBC with some assistance in the projects that they're doing. They don't do just building projects, they do some public works projects also, like the 300 King Street facility. So I identified that. I also just wanted to point out that the Finance Committee did meet last week. I explained that, we were going through this process with them, and they were very much appreciative of it. They also wanted to point out that 2 other items that they were very interested in discussing next week would be the additional 5 hours for the town clerk to provide some evening hours, so it's be an expansion in service, and the adjustment to the veterans agent stipend of $2,500 to cover the hours that he's currently working now. So I told them I would relay that to you.
No, my only criticism seems you slacked off at the end and only rounded it to the $50.
I know. I could buy more.
This answers the mail greatly. Thanks, Bonnie.
No, thank you.
Yeah, fully concur.
Chuck, questions?
This is great, thank you very much. I was okay with it last week.
One quick question, I apologize if you answered it. What's the fringe of 24,000?
It would be the maximum type of benefit package, so it would be like a family plan health insurance, plus the
okay.
retirement contribution, plus, Medicare and everything else that goes along.
Thank you.
It might be less, but
Got it.
Mr. Knox? All right, so I have a few comments for you. I guess, we've been saying level staffing right along. This is a change. I just want the board to be aware that, what other departments are gonna come forward to say, we want more staff also. Late in this process, this is being presented to us. So I kinda have an issue with that, but, I'm one voice out of 5. Secondly, it's shocking to me, the money we spend on engineering services. And I made a comment on Super Saturday when we were doing the budget process. We spend a lot of money on engineering. We have a great engineering firm. And if in fact this goes forward, I would not only request, but I'd mandate that this individual take a look at those engineering services, budget, bid them, get the best bang for our bucks. Because $400,000 for oversight and over $700,000 for the year is a lot of money. That's a lot of roads that can be done. So those are a couple of my concerns. Again, the level staffing is where we have been. Here we are closing the warrant next week. No other department had the opportunity to come forward because we said level staffing. And we're talking about adding the FTE, not replacing an FTE, but actually increasing the FTE for the highway. I just want that out there.
I think it would, different circumstances here too. I mean, I agree with what you said. After what Bonnie went through, and it shows that the savings we have here, it's just a different circumstance.
This is not something that's in the 11th hour, Jim. This is something that, we got the report last October,
Yep.
and with the recommendations, and Jim's been before us, he came back before us in May, and we pushed it out then, and he came back again last week, and now it's before us here with some additional data.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying relative to level staffing, and we're sending a message to all, but I think I won't even call it plausible deniability. I think this is justifiable, extremely justifiable. It's something that Jimmy's taken it in stride. He has been without this position since 2008. We've been spending a lot of money, to your point, on engineering, and I think, thank you very much, Bonnie, for the justification, but I think Jim's been a good soldier, and he's kind of taken on the chin. Other departments have gotten back. The schools have gotten some of the cuts that they had to take in 2008, 2009, and beyond. Some of those services have been put back into their budgets, and I think the other departments have realized some staffing increases as well. So we have a deputy director at the library. We've got there's I think this is easily justified. So I appreciate the effort and the time that Bonnie and Jim put into it, and I think that it's something we need to move forward on.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just to add on to that too, one thing I didn't mention before too, is that by having in-house too, the person is right there, as opposed to having an outside firm say, yeah, we can be there on Thursday. Now if Jim, well, is the head of that department in the future, can just say, we need to go here and take a look at this, or they can look at the plans right there instead of waiting for them to come in. So there's a savings there too, whether it's hours or time.
Efficiencies.
Let's hope so, yeah. I'm hoping.
I appreciate you keeping the eye on the target, because we have mentioned that, and certainly know what I've been pushing for here for the next upcoming fiscal year. But the math supports this one greatly. You know, we're talking $94,000 total with salary and fringe, and you offset that with $74,000. So there's $20,000 to be concerned with for sure. But our earlier conversation about stormwater, I'm convinced that our in-house resource at this point are not sufficient to be able to handle that. And I'd like to be wrong. I'd like very much to be wrong on that. But here's one possible offset in the highway department, which is one of the enforcement departments that we're going to be designating. So this comes in useful, I believe, in that regard, in addition to everything else we talked about.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So, go ahead.
Sorry, the only thing, I wouldn't disagree with any of that, and I'm fully supportive of getting Jim the help he needs. The only thing I'd say is we have heard from other departments of similar, or, staffing needs, and so we just gotta, move forward, figure out how we deal with these situations.
I think one thing that we might want to remember is that when those other departments ask for help, one of the departments that they turn to most often, and apart from Bonnie's, is highway. That there's just an endless amount of things, whether it's supporting the regulatory boards. Jim is a fixture at the planning board meeting as much as he is here. The way he interacts with Park and Rec and the schools and the other entities but what we've seen is in order for Jim, and not to personalize it, but in order for the highway department to better fulfill the mission that we're already asking of it, we're going to be able to achieve a lot more.
So there was another, and I read it somewhere, and I'm trying to locate it, where you pulled on an excerpt as far as the position itself. I don't know where I read it.
The job description?
Yeah, the job description.
Action.
What page? I didn't get that page last time. What page was that? My concern is, I think I read somewhere where it wasn't a required PE position.
We did, we looked at both aspects. We looked at a engineering technologist, which wouldn't be a PE, and a PE position. And the engineering technologist came in at a grade 11, but it was a low grade 11. And then we redid the job description to do an engineering position. and
I'm
it
good
came
with the
in-
PE, that's
Yeah,
all
it
I.
came in at a high 11.
This has a PE.
That's, I
Yeah.
got conflict
Yeah.
reading through here.
How's that?
I
Yeah.
just want to make sure it's a PE.
Right.
I think PJ was talking about the tech last time and was pushing for the PE. We just want to make sure we have a PE. Any other comments, questions? I'll look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to include in the town's operating budget request for fiscal year 2017 a full-time position of town engineer for the highway department to be offset by a reduction from roadway expenses, salary $70,000, fringe $24,200.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bonnie.
Putting that job description about looking at engineering costs.
It's in there.
May 2nd annual special town meeting, 5B. Insert articles on the town meeting warrants. Keith, we got 5?
Yeah, there's just a handful of articles to deal with tonight. You'll be dealing with a bunch more next week and with the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and schools. We'll be talking about the budget then. We'll have the Community Preservation Committee in next week to talk about their articles. The Light and Water will come in and talk about theirs. So all that's not on that agenda, I've tried to carve out for this agenda tonight in order to complete action. Bonnie had brought to our attention that the school department will need to have an article through which we can appropriate proceeds from an insurance claim,
Correct.
because that amount's going to come in more than $20,000, and that requires a town meeting vote. So we should need to put an article in on the schools.
So let's talk about that real quick. Is this an old insurance claim, or is this the
No,
roof?
this is one, it's the
The broken
pipe
pipe?
burst, yes.
So those repairs have been completed?
Yeah, what they need, they're underway. I don't know if they've totally been completed, but I know the equipment is being replaced. I know the claim is going to be over $20,000, but we haven't been given a final number from
Do we have a
Maria.
deductible? Why the 20 grand, I guess, is what my question is.
Well, they're gonna give us a check for
It's money
20
we're
grand.
getting.
Right.
So in order to
Okay.
spend
We
that
can't
check
spend it.
on the repairs, we need a
Okay.
town meeting vote to
All right.
authorize it.
If the...
So I just don't want to make sure, I don't want the repairs to be held up based on...
No, they'll use their reserves
Yeah,
in the
okay.
interim, but in order to close that gap by the end of the year, we need to give them the
I just
authorization to
Don't
spend.
want the,
It's money coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it was coming in less than 20, we wouldn't need a town meeting
Yeah, we
vote.
gotcha.
I have a question on that one. I know that Dan Provost's room was hit really bad by that, and he's a very special teacher that has very special equipment, like the, what's that thing, the 3D printers? Like, he's got really high-tech equipment, and a lot of it got damaged, and he's donated a lot of that himself. So I'm just being nosy and curious, does any of this replace his equipment, or is it just building stuff?
As long as it's town equipment, if he donated it to
He
the
did,
schools,
yeah.
it would be town equipment.
Oh, that's
that
great
would be
news.
replaced.
That's great.
So,
Okay. I was just concerned about that timeframe
Yeah,
of...
they'll use their reserves, and then we'll
Okay,
replenish it.
I'm good. We're just talking about that first.
No, I did, keep going.
Go ahead. Number 7, capital.
So the next item, you have not yet voted to insert the capital items article, but you've talked about all of the projects, with the exception of that we were waiting to hear the report from the Facility Needs Assessment Committee, and Bonnie has provided those numbers on page 6 of the annual town meeting reports in Article 7. So it's a total of $561,048 on those facility needs recommendations.
So I saw the late email about the
Yeah, I
univent
saw something come through
reconciliation.
today,
So
so-
there's a little bit, I think Daryl sent it out Sunday night
Okay.
in regards to the reconciliation. He really wants to sit down. I'm okay with doing everything. Let's insert everything with the exception of that one piece. We just gotta reconcile those univent things. You know,
Can we do it next?
We did it all the first time.
Next Monday?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
just
school
do
committee
that
will be
one.
here next Monday. Can
Yeah,
we get
so if we can,
finalize
you
that?
wanna do everything else?
Yeah,
Other than the
everything else.
facility?
Yeah.
All right, you guys okay with that?
So you just leave the whole thing out for now?
No,
or-
do it, everything with the exception of the facilities. What are we calling that? No,
Gotcha.
no, it's all one.
Facilities, capital.
Yeah, facilities, how do you word it in yours?
Facilities and infrastructure.
Facilities and infrastructure.
Got it.
We can insert that Monday when the
Okay.
school committee's here.
I'll accept.
And I have to say, I misspoke. It's Dan Hogan. Dan Hogan's the wonderful teacher. Provost told me. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, next is an article on school trust fund grants, and the form of the article here does not yet specify what the projects are, because the trust fund commissioners and the school committee are still working on it. That will not be settled before the 7th of March, though, so what I would suggest is we put the placeholder article in, and then the motion that's offered, and that will be in the booklet, will indicate what the amount is and what the project is for. That will get settled after our next meeting.
Gotcha.
And then Nagog Hill Road easements, Article 18, Jim Clyde had brought to our attention that there are 4 easements that are needed in order to go forward with the Nagog Hill project. Bonnie actually has a change order to the Nagog Hill contract in the amount of $4,500? $4,370, that we would need to have Green International do those plans and have them prepared for town meeting.
So the only concern I'd have is whether or not I know Jim does a great job vetting through, having his community meetings and all that. That's all been vetted through this system, so he's all set and good to go. All right.
Yeah. It'll come as no surprise to the affected property
Gotcha.
owners, for
Gotcha.
sure, yeah.
22?
Then 22, to insert an article, the home rule petition for additional package store license, and since we have multiple interest in it, I would think it would be well for us, we talked about having a town meeting, let's insert the article, but then between now and town meeting, let's have a public hearing to find out who's interested in the license.
So this will be a placeholder only at this
Yes,
point?
yeah.
I had a question about that one, and apologies if you guys already went over it, but so we only get one, and if we have two people that want it, we get to pick one, or does
Well,
it?
Well, we could go for 2.
Yeah, we could say in the article, because at the time we got the request, it was for one, we now have requests for 2, so we could certainly put in the form of the motion 1 or more
There you go.
licenses, and I think that would cover us.
Members, any questions? Look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles onto the warrant for the May 2nd, 2016 annual special town meeting, subject to approval as to form by town council. Special town meeting 3, use of insurance proceeds over $20,000, requested by school committee. Annual town meeting 7, FY 2017 capital items from available funds with the exception of facilities and infrastructure line items. Annual town meeting 13, school trust fund grants. Annual town meeting 18, Nagog Hill Road easements. Annual town meeting 22, home rule petition, 1 or more package store all alcohol license.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 6A, management contract extensions. Deputy Police Chief, Deputy Fire Chief, Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget, and also Town Accountant. It's a big title.
All of those people.
Come up, gentlemen. I apologize again for the last meeting. Mr., see?
We don't have a full board.
He's gone again. He's gone again.
Last week you left.
Last week, Mr. Knox had to leave early, and we wanted a full board to ratify these contracts.
We have a full board again.
We now have a full board again. We're back. So, as I said last week, the contracts had a few modifications, I believe, to the deputy fire chief, something about the vacation and vehicle.
Yeah, I want to take that truck on my vacation.
Okay, so, which mirrors the deputy police chief, it's all good. And then to the 3 of the contracts, the verbiage about having a satisfactory performance review to tie it into getting their raises. All 3, is any questions for the board? And start off with Tom.
No, just happy to work for the town.
Nice.
No questions.
Mr. Patterson, thank you. Bonnie, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, Mr. Knox?
No, just have to, we have these 2 qualified people here.
3.
You get 3.
Which 2?
Which two? This is like the package store thing, right? You have to give one? Two? I don't know. There we go.
Up to 3.
Well, there's a room full of qualified people.
That's true. Likewise,
Selectman
thank you guys
Hebert.
for all you do.
Mr. Avella?
Similarly, I've already praised mine this evening, what you do with police, Jeff, appreciate it greatly. Certainly Tom, a safe town, and a lot's attributable to you, so thanks very much.
Mr. DeCoste?
I'm good. Thank you for your service.
I had a conversation with the fire chief a couple weeks ago, and, we talked about the time you guys put in for the town. As we do, you guys go above and beyond, not just here, but fire, police, and Keith and Bonnie. Those contract individuals that we have for this town are outstanding. You guys do a great job. You're always there when we need you, and you go above and beyond. So, as a resident, I appreciate it, and thank you all. As a chairman of the Board of Selectmen, I appreciate it, and thank you all, to include the both chiefs, too. So, good job. The twist of the whole performance appraisal thing, I think, is benefit you guys too, so.
Well said.
I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize execution of contract extensions with the following management employees whose contracts expire in 2016. Deputy Police Chief Jeff Patterson and Deputy Fire Chief Tom Clancy, both for July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017. And Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget Town Accountant Bonnie Holston for August 7th, 2016 through August 6th, 2019.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, guys.
Thank you very much.
I'll get to work, guys.
Late night again. Jeff?
Come on, Bonnie, make play the rounds.
It's no big deal, I got you. That's good.
Can't go past
Great team.
Yeah, great team.
We're lucky.
Yeah, we're
We are
really
very,
awesome.
very lucky, very fortunate. So, moving on to the administration of performance appraisal system, Board of Selectmen employees. So this board supervises 3 individuals, the fire chief, police chief, and the town administrator. And it's time to do evaluations. So, the policy states we have 3 options and 4 options. And the board is selected to go to option 2, which allows, thanks, guys. Allows the board to assign the individuals, both fire and police chief, individual board members to do their evaluations as chair. The chair will do the town administrator. And I had the opportunity to talk individually to board members. And Mr. Knox and Ms. Hebert will be doing the fire chief, and Mr. DeCose and Mr. Avella will be evaluating the police chief for this evaluation period. Any questions, Chief?
This is not that I don't want an evaluation, there is no provision in my contract for an evaluation, just so you know. So,
Okay.
let's get it in there, is
So
what I'm saying.
we'll amend it, yeah.
I'm just letting you know that there is
Yeah.
no provisions within my contract
Yeah.
at this current time.
Yeah, in fact, because yours is one of the older contract forms we went by, but we had the opportunity to amend that right after town meeting, when the practice has been to implement by a contract amendment whatever the dollar figures are that town meeting
Yep.
has just approved for the coming fiscal year.
Yep.
So in the normal course of events, there would be 6 amendments that you would be asked to execute before, after town meeting and before the 1st of July.
First.
And that's, so we can take care of that issue then.
So, Chief, if you don't mind, we'll draft an amendment. Basically, the language changes that we've done in the other contracts already, and sign off on it. We can get that official, so we can do it.
That's just why I brought it up, so that
Outstanding, thank you.
not show there, so.
And we can move forward. Board members, any other questions? Chief, you have any? No?
I just
Mr.
have a
Knox?
question about the different options we have.
Sure.
Is this something we can change every year if we want to go with option 3 next year or 4? Or is,
It's at the board's will.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I guess
well,
I'm-
there are 2 answers to that. One is that you can either do it annually, or until you change, you vote a policy matter, and that remains in effect until you change it. The other way that was specifically envisioned in option 3 is that you put whatever your answer is into the contract with the employee, so at least for the term. So if you entered into a 3-year agreement for a contract, then you would follow a particular option for those 3 years. That's the other way to do it.
And I guess doing it that way, if board members change and we have different opinions, this gives us the ability to talk about it.
my only other question too is do we have a standard set of procedures we want to use when we're going through that, or is this?
There was a handbook that
Yeah, there is a handbook and there's a whole procedure.
Bergman
We can-
will get
we can
to
give
you.
you briefings on that, and just in and we have used the option 2, or the option 2 has been used with a couple of other elected boards, and Park and Rec, for example, as their own employee, but in keeping with this option, they've invited the town administrator to be part of that process, which is, under the town code that the Town Government Study Committee came up with, that the town administrator is to sort of provide input on performance for all employees and to administer the system. So I'd be happy to be working with the 2 sets of evaluators as we go forward.
Great question.
Yeah, I just want to bring it up, that it's going to be delegated to us, as 2 teams, if you will, and with the chairman doing the town administrator. It's plenty fine, it's just that option 2 is not that clear in specifying the delegation. It does say board chairman or supervisor, performance held in private. And I concur that the discussions take place in private, so that can be a frank and honest exchange, and then an agreement between both the employee and the board as to what the assessment is. But that at some point should become public. In a matter of transparency, we should be able to tell our folks in town as to how our leadership is performing.
How it's graded up.
That's option 1.
Well, that's all board members as supervisor.
Right.
And I'm not advocating that. I see no problem
Yeah.
in delegating, as we've discussed here.
Right.
But then, once that agreement is reached between the employee and the 2 board members that are acting on behalf of the board, and then we come forward and say, here's a synopsis of that assessment.
You can certainly give a synopsis on the assessment. That's,
Evaluation.
sure.
Because obviously, 2 of the board members here on the Board of Selectmen come from a slightly different background
Mhm.
in how the senior executive, if you will, of the organization was rated, and rated very publicly by the entire board. Doesn't mean that's how we have to do it here, just saying that the background that we come from is just slightly different. And I'm seeing pretty much a hybrid of that, I think, is useful for all of us in town.
Any issues with that? Guys, okay, I'm good.
Because it instills confidence to the folks. Now, people know you in town, not everybody knows you, but then very publicly, hey, our chiefs are doing this, our town administrator is doing this for us.
Right. No.
That's something we can bring up. Just a question for Keith, that's something we'd have to amend at personnel,
What's that?
option 2, just the language.
We could certainly amend option 2 to, it had not envisioned that it would be more than 1 person, and we could certainly amend it there, for starters, like,
Delegate.
Delegates.
yeah.
It's an excellent policy document, gives us good guidance.
It was meant to be
and a point of
guidance,
departure.
yeah.
Right.
And
It's a jumping off
yeah,
point.
we've taken a 10-degree tack to it, that's all.
Any other questions, comments?
Fire, police?
Fire,
Fire,
police.
police, okay.
We have the time.
TA.
We want to have this done?
Well, you need to get it done prior to the election.
Yeah.
November?
No. The annual town election.
Well, there's one tomorrow.
Well, I mean, typically, the...
Your half has to get it
Yeah,
done before the election.
typically, the
Oh, maybe your
reviews
half.
take place
But when?
while the current board is still sitting.
Right.
So we would want to have it done, yeah, in some years I would,
It'd be nice to
I'd have the
get it done
chairs
for
do
prior
mine
to
in
town
April.
meeting, because we're gonna move forward the salary articles, and that way there we can have the appraisals done, implement the salaries, and we're good to go. So prior to town meeting, we
cuts.
work. Now look for a motion before Chuck gets out of hand.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote as appointing authority for the fire chief, police chief, town administrator, that said employee's performance review shall be conducted by the Board of Selectmen in accordance with option 2 of the policy guidance document on performance reviews, employees of multiple member town boards, adopted on December 1st, 2014.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chief will get that amendment for you, get it signed, we're good to go.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Last item is minutes approval. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, move the Board of Selectmen approve the meeting minutes from Thursday, February 11th, 2016.
Second.
Moving to second, and all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, thank you.
And I'd just like to remind folks tomorrow, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Littleton Middle School for the primaries.
Nice job, thank you.
Did we want to mention at least the request to use Littleton Common, or can I deal with that administratively?
Maybe we can deal with that next week. I don't think there's any need.
No, it's in line.
That's all right. If there's any incidents, we can mention it next week. Look for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Then moved and second, and all those in favor?
We will act on the request.
So this is the date.